Um, Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Get Involved in a TRB Standing Committee Secrets from the Pros. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. First, a quick intro about the webinar host. The National Operations Center of Excellence, or NOCO, is designed to offer resources for the TSMO community. TSMO stands for Transportation System Management and Operations. We have a variety of technical services such as peer exchange workshop, webinars, and ongoing assessment of best practices in the field. So feel free to browse our entire collection of NOCO resources in our Knowledge Center. So I'll share the link in the chat box in a bit for you guys. A recorded version of this webinar along with the presentation slides will be available for access on our website within 24 to 48 hours. For those of you just joining us, welcome. We are about to start today's webinar on how to get involved in a TRB standing committee. So I just wanted to use this opportunity to talk briefly about NOCO's 2018 TRB student competition. This is a contest open to students of all levels where they are asked to feature their experience with TSMO and TSMO strategies in a dynamic electronic format. So the submissions are due November 1st, 2017. This is an exciting opportunity for students, so please spread the word around to anyone who you think may be interested in this. And for more details, check out our website on how to enter this contest and learn more about it. So here's the agenda for today. Our moderators today are Nikola Ivanov and Leila Haji-Babai. They are from the TRB Operations and Preservation Group Young Council member. They will be presenting in the first part of this webinar on general ways you can get involved with TRB committees. They will be followed with a committee presentation where they will specifically talk about different opportunities that's available related to their committees. We have Les Jacobson from Regional Transportation Systems Management and Operations. We will have John Obenberger from Freeway Operations Committee. Then Janice Daniel from Highway Capacity and Quality of Service. And last but not least, we have Yao John Wu from Highway Traffic Monitoring. So after this part is over, we want to have an interactive and engaging question and answer session. So we're gonna take the questions at the very end, and you're more than welcome to enter your question in the question pane here at any time during the presentation. At the end, Leila and Nicole will go through those questions and read them out loud and pass it around to different panels here to answer them. So with that, I'll hand it over to Nicola for his presentation.
Okay, so thank you for that introduction, Nilo. I hope you all can see my screen now. My name is Nikola Ivanov. I'm the Operations and Preservation Group Young Member Council co-chair, mainly representing operations section within that. And my co-chair is on the call as well, Dr. Leila Haji-Babai. She's representing maintenance and the preservation section. And I'll just spend a few minutes talking about Young Member Council and some of the more general ways that young members and others at TRB can get involved in standing committees and other activities that happen at TRB. So first I'll talk a little bit about the TRB structure and Operations and Preservation Group Young Member Council. I found when I got involved in TRB, understanding where all of these different entities sit was challenging, and so what I'm going to show you here is just a kind of an organizational chart that's not a set-in-stone chart. It's just an overview of what things look like and where we sit. So there's a TRB Executive Committee at the top level, and below that there's a Technical Activities Council, which is responsible for most of the work associated with putting together the TRB annual meeting and programs associated with that. And the TRB Activities Council is overseeing 11 different TRB groups. And so this is where the concept of group comes from. And these are the 11 groups. We have policy and organization, planning and environment, design and construction, operations and preservation, which is the group that we're mostly involved with, legal resources, safety and system users, public transportation, rail, freight systems, aviation, and marine. So these 11 groups pretty much consist of all of the standing committees that exist at TRB and associated task forces and subcommittees and so on. And so each one of these groups, or most of these groups, might have separate sections within them. So if you look at the groups that have and, so policy and organization, usually, or planning and environment, they might have separate sections. So in our case, within operations and preservation group, we have two sections. We have an operations section and maintenance and preservation section. And then within each one of those sections, there's a number of different standing committees, and different sections are of different sizes. So some sections have a lot of committees, some sections not so many. Today, you'll see representation from 4 committees, standing committees: regional TSM&O, freeway operations, highway traffic monitoring, and highway capacity and quality of service. And there are many other standing committees that exist at TRB as well. And then within each one of these committees, usually there's a number of subcommittees and task forces. And this is where a lot of boots on the ground type of work happens. And so if you look at this structure, the way that it's organized, each one of the groups has a chair, and each one of the sections has a chair, and then each one of the standing committees has a chair. And those are the formal positions and formal organizational structures within TRB. And so to get involved at these levels, most people are either members or friends of standing committees, but they also participate on subcommittees and task forces that are most of the time less formal, and those are the ways to get involved early on. And some of the committees that are going to be presenting today may be talking about different ways that you can get involved. So where does the Operations and Preservation Group Young Member Council sit? Well, the Young Member Council sits on the same level as the Technical Activities Council. And so Young Member Council is made up of representation from each one of the groups. So a young member from each one of the groups, or 2 young members from each one of the groups, sits on the Young Member Council. And then Young Member Council actually has 11, and there is no clear terminology here because there is no such thing as sub-council. So we call them subcommittees, but they're really something in between. But there are 11 sub-councils that represent each one of the groups. So what that means is that Layla and I are co-chairs of the Operations and Preservation Group Young Member Council. So that's kind of the general overview of what TRB looks like and different entry points for people to get involved. So a little bit on our mission and vision. We got established several years ago, and since then we've been trying to really work on involving young members in different levels of TRB. And so as you see by our mission, it is to provide a forum and support framework for all students and young professionals interested in operations and preservation so they can reach their full potential as TRB young members. And our vision is a little more specific in terms of how we manage to do that, and then we also have some high-level goals that we use to guide our work towards this mission and vision. So what are some of the activities that we have been involved in? Well, we have our Operations and Preservation Group Young Member Council website, and you'll be able to access these slides and see these links later on. But what we do is we use this website to disseminate information about young member geared activities at TRB. We are pretty good at updating it and keeping it up to date. We also have a Twitter account, and so we'll frequently share information related to activities that might be relevant to our members. We also have a pretty active LinkedIn group, and this group is used just to disseminate interesting articles and discussions between people involved in TRB and beyond, but mainly interested in operations and preservation. We also have a mentorship program that we started this year. We've already done the matching, but the mentor applications and mentee applications are still open if you're interested, although we might not be able to match everybody up. But we had a great turnout for that. We had about 49 folks that responded, so that so now we have close to 24 pairs that are going to be mentoring pairs that are going to be getting together leading up to the TRB annual meeting and really getting to know each other and helping each other get involved more and learn from each other. So I highly recommend participation in that program. Beyond that, at 2017 TRB annual meeting, we put together what I call a reverse poster session. And this is a poster session where standing committees in operations and preservation group were able to display some of their work, some of the technical subcommittees they might have, other things that they're doing, general scope, so that they can allow young members and other people to get familiar, get some exposure to members of the committees and learn about what the committees are doing, and then find entry points to where they can get involved and volunteer. And so with the success of that session, we worked with National Operations Center of Excellence, and I want to thank National Operations Center of Excellence for hosting these webinars, to put together a 3-webinar series, the one today and then one in November and one in December, to kind of expand on this and allow committees that maybe didn't have the opportunity or wanted to do it again, present to a larger audience as well. The main goal, the vision, is to connect standing committees with enthusiastic young members, and I think this is a mutual benefit to the two groups, with standing committees getting additional help and fresh insight, and on the young members side, getting exposure to current research, upcoming research, development research statements, and things like that, and getting involved in TRB on a higher level. So what are some of the ways to get involved? The first way is to learn and connect. One thing that I would suggest is for all of you that are going to be attending the annual meeting to attend the welcome and new attendee orientation session. Even if you've been to TRB before, there's a lot of valuable information that's being shared in these sessions, and I think they're extremely valuable for people to get together and talk about interests and opportunities. And a lot of folks that are members of committees or in other functions at committees are present at this session, so it's a great place to network. Attend your group Young Member Council meetings. So we are going to have one most likely on Monday at lunchtime, so I welcome all of you to attend that. We're also putting together a TRB Career Fair that's going to be happening most of the day Sunday, so that's another opportunity for everybody to get involved. You can participate in sessions and workshops. These are kind of the center of the program for TRB, and you can learn a lot from those. And you can attend networking events. There are a lot of receptions. There are a lot of different things that are happening to get people to connect to each other. I mentioned mentorship program earlier. That's one of the ways to get involved. That's the way I got involved. I found a mentor that helped me learn about TRB and learn how to get involved. And finally, ask questions and ask for help. There is no shame in asking for help, and there is no shame in asking questions. So that's one way to get involved and learn and connect. But beyond learning and connecting, what's more important, in my opinion, is volunteering. TRB, for the most part, beyond the staff, is a volunteer organization. And so most of the people on this call that are involved in TRB are doing this on their own time, and they're volunteering that time to do this work. So one way to get involved is to volunteer. You can become a friend of a committee. You don't have to do anything other than go to My TRB and join a committee as a friend. Then you will start receiving their communications, and you can get involved and start helping out. You can join a subcommittee. Again, most subcommittees don't have a formal structure where you have to be appointed to be a member, so you can join a subcommittee, and that's where a lot of boots on the ground work happens. So I highly recommend doing that. Do paper reviews. Committees receive a lot of papers to review, and your expertise can be very valuable in actually reviewing those papers and helping draft research needs and synthesis statements. You can also maintain committees' websites and social media accounts. A lot of committees are working on disseminating their message more effectively nowadays, and young members are pretty good at working with committees on websites and social media. So that's another way to do it. And then help organize and run sessions, workshops, and meetings. There's always need for people to moderate, to identify speakers, to do logistics, or to speak in these different sessions and workshops. So offer up your expertise and also get involved by talking to people that are organizing and running these sessions as well. So that's kind of the high level Young Member Council, and also some generic ways to get involved with different standing committees. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter. So it's going to be Les Jacobson from Regional Transportation System Management and Operations, and he'll talk about more specific things related to regional TISMO.
Thanks, Nicola. Can everyone hear me? Just want to do a sound check and make sure.
Yep, we hear you well.
Very good. Okay, so I will get right into it. One of the things that we thought would be of interest is to let people know how we got involved in TRB. And I actually went to a committee meeting way back in 1979 when I was about to enter graduate school. So that just happened to be, I was at a location where that meeting was being held, so I didn't have to travel. And quite frankly, it was all kind of, it was very interesting and exciting, but a lot of what was talked about at the time, I didn't fully understand. It was the Freeway Operations Committee meeting. And then I had been to a couple of committee meetings after that. My first annual meeting was 9 years later, all the way up in 1988, and I've been fortunate enough to attend all the annual meetings since that time. I would say that what I did was look to focus on what I was working on. So that's been things like freeway operations, HOV systems, transportation system management, and operations. I even did a stint for a while on emerging legal issues. But I think in terms of my first annual meeting, I was kind of overwhelmed in a lot of ways. There was just so much going on. I attended as part of my organization's contingent that went there, so there were some people who could help me figure out what was important and what to do rather than try to wade through all of that. And back in 1988, there were many fewer people than there are today, many fewer sessions, many fewer meetings. So it's even more important now to try and tie in, as Nick said, with a mentor of some sort to help you out. I've been involved in the Regional Transportation System Management and Operations Committee since it was started back in the late 90s. I was a member for a while, then I became secretary and then moved into the chair role. And this is an area that's really a passion of mine, so I would say that it's probably important to find that committee or set of committees that you're really passionate about and try and get involved there one way or another. And we'll go over a little bit next on what TRB means to me, and then how to get involved. For TRB, for me, it's my primary and really dominant professional organization. I belong to others, but TRB is where I spend most of my time. And the reason for that is there's a really broad set of technical activities. You know, the number of topics are huge. You saw from what Nick presented how broad the committee structure is, and he really didn't get down to the level of the actual number of committees and the types of committees that are actually there. So there's a broad set of disciplines. And so not only as your interests evolve, can you find other things. But as professionally, you work in an area where you really need to understand something from a different discipline, it's there. Also, because it's got the focus on research, there's a lot of cutting-edge concepts that come out. My focus is on improving transportation, and that's why it's really on the operations area overall for me. My committee is the Regional Transportation System Management and Operations Committee. I'm not going to go through this in depth, but every committee has a vision and mission. So one way to figure out where you might want to be is to look at the websites for committees that you're interested in and look to see what their vision and mission are. We have a very active committee. A lot of people think that we're a bit crazy to have 14 subcommittees, but the truth is that we've got a lot of people who have energy in doing things for TRB and in volunteering and being active, and so the best way from my perspective to get things done is to let people kind of get involved where their passions lie. A couple of years ago, we were selected for the TRB Blue Ribbon Committee for Advancing Research. Our research committee chair is Tom Jacobs, and he really does an excellent job of collaborating with others. It was especially because of our coordination, not just within TRB, but outside with groups like AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Transportation and State Highway and Transportation Officials, specifically in their subcommittee on Transportation System Management and Operations. But we also collaborate with ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and then the National Operations Center of Excellence, who is hosting this webinar. We have a focus on needs statements and synthesis topics, and we especially try to develop some topics that then we can work collaboratively with the AASHTO committee, because that's one of the best ways, most effective ways that we can get research funded. We also have a transportation system management and operations glossary that we keep up, and a couple of other kind of focus areas for us are traffic incident management and decision support systems. So probably what's most important, how to get involved in, I'm saying in the regional TSMO committee, but I think this goes with any committee. The most important thing to do is sign up as a friend of the committee. Go to mytrb.org if you haven't already. Get registered, look at the committees, and sign up as a friend. Anyone can sign up as a friend. In fact, you have to sign up for a friend as a friend. You can't go to the committee chair or secretary and say, "Can I become a friend of the committee?" You just sign up. The next thing is to get in touch with the chair or the secretary or any of the subcommittee chairs and let people know that you're interested, and specifically what types of things you're interested in, and especially if you're interested in doing some work for a subcommittee or the committee, that's really important. If possible, attending a meeting and then meeting chairs, secretaries, subcommittee chairs, or any of the committee members in person is also an important way. As Nick said, there's some committees get a lot of papers, and everyone needs help with volunteers to review papers. And even if if you haven't been out in the professional world yet, or just a short time, I would say that doesn't mean that you are not a capable paper reviewer. Each committee has a paper review coordinator, and most committees will then have that coordinator communicate with you, ask what your expertise is, things like that. Also, as Nick mentioned, volunteer for a subcommittee. You don't need to be a committee member to be involved in a subcommittee, and most subcommittees are always looking. And of course, getting involved in the Young Member Council is also really important. So that's all I have at this point, and I would like to pass it on, I believe, to John Obenberger's next.
Good. Thanks, Les. We appreciate it. Great job. Can you hear me okay, just to check?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect. Next slide. I'm going to jump in where Les left off, just for a quick comparison between our two committees. The Freeway Operations Committee really is the goal similar to RITSMO, trying to be the focal point and provide leadership within TRB and other professional organizations on advancing operations. And unique to our committee is what operational strategies and the enabling technologies that are used to manage and operate traffic on freeway facilities in the adjoining corridors. Next slide. The committee has a number of different events, and I wanted to highlight, just to give you a flavor, and I'll cover a quick slide for each one, the type of activities, and Les provided a quick overview of some that the RITSMO committee covers. We've got workshops, technical sessions with invited speakers. We have joint meetings with our other TRB committees, and we have our own committee meetings, either a business meeting for our full committee or subcommittee meetings. And all of these events are opportunities for folks to attend, interact with current members and friends of the committee, but also get a good idea of what are the leading, who are the leading practitioners working on efforts around the globe, and what are some of the challenges and opportunities that exist for research. And if you're looking to get involved in a particular activity or effort associated with your interests for your current position or professional development, it gives you a good cross-section, like Les mentioned, to jump in and volunteer and get engaged. Next slide. One of the workshops, to give you an example of the type of things we facilitate and put on each year, we got 3 or 4 workshops we're either leading or co-sponsoring with other TRB committees. One of the workshops we're co-sponsoring and working with Les's committee is on traffic incident management. I'll just give a quick infomercial about traffic management systems and centers and integrating innovative technologies and how we're doing that, to look for feedback, discuss what works, what doesn't work, what may be some gaps in practice, what are our research needs, and what may be the action planning that we can do with the volunteers at the workshop to look at packaging future research to advance to get funding to develop guidance or tools that other practitioners could use around the country. So this gives you an example of what some of the workshops look like on a Sunday, and I definitely encourage you, if you're coming to TRB and it's your first time, to try to attend as many of the workshops as you can and really get engaged with a topic that's of interest to you. Next slide. We also have technical sessions, which are on the main program that each committee sponsors, and this is just one example where we look to volunteers of our committee to propose key hot topics around which we want to advocate successful practices from around the globe, to give people an idea of how people are addressing these issues in their particular region, state, or country. So one of the sessions where we've got invited speakers for the 2018 annual meeting is listed here, where we've got speakers coming from Europe as well as Australia to provide some highlights on successful practices and lessons learned that they have, which will build off of and supplement what we'll cover Sunday in our workshop. Next slide. We also have our annual meeting for our committee. We have, and these are all open meetings, both our meetings as well as subcommittee meetings are all open. We encourage people to attend if the committee and subject is of interest. We've got a business portion of our meeting where our subcommittees provide report outs. We talk about what are our research priorities and what are our activities that we're going to pursue for as a committee in partnership with our other TRB committees or other industry groups that we work with on a regular basis. That's primarily the focus of our morning meeting, the afternoon meeting, or the evening meeting, which is the technical portion. We have 2 to 3 invited speakers to talk about topics related to our workshops, our proposed future research that we're looking to consider. And one example of one of the topics to give you an idea of the detail we're going to go into at that evening presentation is automating the use of operational strategies and traffic management systems in Melbourne, where we've got a speaker coming from Australia. And so we'll have a 25-minute presentation and a good 10 to 15-minute opportunity for participants to ask questions with Mr. Gaffney. Next slide. We have subcommittees, and here's a list of the subcommittees that we have for the Freeway Operations Committee, and what we expect to be our times that they'll be meeting on Sunday, January 7th, where each group attends. These are all open, like I mentioned, and we'd encourage you to attend, participate, volunteer. It's a great idea to learn more about what folks are discussing in those efforts, and a great way also to build a network, if you would, around a particular topic of interest that you may have an opportunity to engage in. So for instance, if you went to our operations research subcommittee meeting, they'll be talking about research topics to propose develop research problem statements for, what may be priorities, looking for volunteers to help write a problem statement, and then who to work with within TRB and the other technical committees that Nick covered in his early presentation that may have an interest in the topic as well to coordinate with. So it gives a great opportunity for you to get involved at a ground level with an activity, learn from others that have been working on it, and it's a very inclusive network and fosters an environment of collaboration and getting to meet to know people real quickly. Next slide. One of the activities we've got at our committee that we've worked in partnership with a lot of other TRB committees and other industry groups is a research circular that we publish with TRB titled Advancing Freeway Operations Research. We've got chapters that cover state of the practice, gaps in practice or knowledge, research needs, and what may be priorities to develop research problem statements and try to advance with other partners to pursue the work that's been identified. So it's a great resource for you if you're looking for a research topic of your own, or also looking to get involved with a group with a topic of potential interest. You can find out who are the other co-sponsoring committees that we develop different chapters. Next slide. And this just gives you an idea of the different chapters where we've got detailed information on gaps, practices, and what may be some needs and opportunities. Give you an example of the detail, and most of the work that went on for this circular it was all volunteer work, and folks did it in between annual meeting and mid-year meetings, where they had their own conference calls, emails at night, emails in the weekend, and it was a great opportunity where folks had experience, had an interest to continue to advance research to meet the needs of either their agency, their state, their region, or their country, where we could all pool our collective knowledge and resources to try to tee up what may be needed next for everybody's best interest. Next slide. One of the examples of the success of our work has been actually obtaining support for projects to get funded to develop tools and resources for practitioners to use. So you'll see an example of 5 projects that over the last 4 years we've been successful working with our other TRB committee partners to get support for the research problem statements that came out of the deliberation and collaboration and the hard work of the volunteers of our and other committees. Next slide. One of the other products, a key product of our committee that we work with others, is providing technical review and counsel to the Federal Highway Administration on the continuing evolution and development of the Freeway Management and Operations Handbook. So FHWA is publishing this fall the updated version to the handbook, and we've been a key partner in leading and working in partner with Federal Highways on shaping this handbook as it's evolved since 1983. And we think the great thing of our network that we've been able to establish globally within freeway operations in our network is it's been covered in 4 different languages already. Next slide. And this gives you an example. I think there's 19 or I think I may have left off the 20th slide talking about research and technology transfer, but it gives you an idea of the different chapters similar to the research circular. If there's an area of interest to you, you'd like to get involved, there's folks that talk about capturing what are the current practices, what are the lessons learned, what are the benefits, what should be things people should consider. And it gives a great opportunity for a small group to network, collaborate, and have an opportunity to get involved in something globally where we're trying to advocate practice to folks, our peers around the globe in a particular area, and try to influence not only practice, but then in partnership with the circular, what research may be needed. Next slide. How to get involved, and Les covered this in his slide very well. But when you log into your TRB account, if you're interested in freeway operations, you can add it to be a friend. We've got, I think about 450 people on our group that we connect with, and we expect we'll get over 500 by the time we get to our annual meeting. You can reach out to Beverly Kuhn, the secretary, or some of our other leads of some of our key subcommittees to volunteer, and they'll put you to work on one of the teams on one of the chapters or a particular activity or effort moving forward. Next slide. They asked us to cover what has been our involvement, and I haven't had the experience Les has, but I think my first committee meeting was in '96, January of '96. So I've been fortunate to be able to attend every annual meeting since, and quite a few mid-year meetings of not only the Freeway Operations Committee, but other committees. And as my career has evolved, I've been able to, have been fortunate to participate on a number of different technical committees based on my responsibility. So it's provided a great network, not only to meet the needs that I had as a practitioner, but also for the projects I was working on, and policies and programs, and the need to move practice. TRB has provided a perfect opportunity to engage with the key group of folks that support an issue around the world. Some of the other efforts I've been involved in are synthesis topics and research projects where TRB and the NCHRP program in partnership with AASHTO have selected projects to receive funding, which are, if you ever have the opportunity and you get the support of the people you work from to participate on those panels, I'd encourage you to do it. It's a great opportunity to review the material, review the proposals of people submitting and trying to get selected to develop work on those. And those projects are usually looked to be for the next 10, 20, sometimes 50 years, the technical guidance that will shape other people's programs and policies around the globe. So they're really great opportunities to get involved in leading work and thinking that's collectively going on. And I've also had the opportunity to plan mid-year technical symposiums or conferences with TRB. The workshops and technical sessions I already mentioned, and then also handbooks, research circulars, and developing research problem statements. And it was less mentioned the opportunity to work with folks and be mentored. I will still recall an opportunity where I thought it was just phenomenal. Dolph May, who is one of the leaders in our industry, having an opportunity as a young engineer to write a research problem statement and interact directly with Dolph on trying to develop that research problem statement was really a great experience for me on helping me to improve my writing, but also learning from Dolph how to prepare research problem statements that will meet the needs of our state and local agencies with the products we produce, but also to win appeal of those that are going to select and fund those projects. So a great opportunity. You couldn't ask for a better training environment or professional development environment. Next slide. And that's it. I will pass it off to our next speaker. Is that Janice? Is that you?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about the Higher Capacity and Quality of Service Committee. I'll start off by talking about our mission and purpose on the next slide. I got involved in the Higher Capacity Manual through the Higher Capacity and Quality of Service Committee through the Higher Capacity Manual, which is a lot of times when people talk about our committee, they refer to the Higher Capacity Manual. Our overall mission is we're concerned with looking at factors that affect capacity, traffic flow, comfort, convenience, and safety, and we're about developing computational techniques to quantify these factors. As I mentioned, our major production is the Higher Capacity Manual, although we have produced several other offshoots in the Higher Capacity Manual, but this one is the major one. On the next slide, I just want to start off by talking about my TRB story and how I got involved with TRB. My first TRB meeting occurred in 1986 when I was sent by my employer to attend TRB, and it was overwhelming. At that time, we were in 3 different hotels, and I had the strategy of attending meetings, of going to one paper presentation to another between the 3 hotels. By the second or third day, I was just exhausted. So I didn't have a really good strategy, but it got me really interested in the topic areas that were being presented, and just the fact that there were the sheer numbers of people who were there attending a topic area that I thought was not as interesting as I didn't realize so many people were interested in the same topic I was interested in. The next time I came back to TRB was at a mid-year meeting of the Higher Capacity and Quality of Service in 1993. My PhD advisor invited me to attend. We were working on something related to what the committee was involved with. I soon became a friend of the committee and a friend of several subcommittees. My advisor was the chair of the Urban Street Subcommittee, and I participated in that subcommittee for many years. I reviewed papers, became the secretary of not that committee but another subcommittee, performed a survey of users, and then later, several years later, I became a committee member and the subcommittee chair for the Urban Streets, the same subcommittee my advisor was the chair of. Also involved in other committees, and I'm still involved in one particular task force, and now I'm the secretary of the Higher Capacity and Quality Service Committee. I just wanted to share my story because I think a lot of people who are talking today have a similar story, how we came in a little overwhelmed, but after some time you do find your way. On the next slide, if you can go to the next slide, please. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the structure for the Higher Capacity and Quality of Service Committee. What you're seeing, the boxes below, are the subcommittees themselves. So we have a total of 17 subcommittees. Can be a little bit unwielding in terms of the number of volunteers that we sometimes need. So we are always looking for participants and people who are interested in this area and willing to volunteer. The subcommittees are aligned with the chapters in the Higher Capacity Manual. So there are, for example, subcommittees under uninterrupted flow facilities and subcommittees under interrupted flow facilities. And then we've got lots of cross-cutting subcommittees, including pedestrians and bicycles and performance measures. And then there's administration subcommittee. So I mentioned I was involved in several of these subcommittees when I first began in the Higher Capacity Committee, and I attended and listened, and I was afraid to volunteer, but over time I just started doing some small work, and it was very interesting to me, as well as being able to participate with those people who were chairing the subcommittees and members of the subcommittees. A lot of them were on the papers that I was citing in my dissertation, or they'd written some of the textbooks that I used in my coursework. So it was actually a privilege for me to be participating in that, even at the subcommittee level. And next slide, please. Within our committee, we have just really finished something that took a lot of our effort and time, and it took all the committee involvement, and that was the production of the 6th edition of the Higher Capacity Manual. It's produced in 2016, but really technically came out in 2017. If you're familiar with the Higher Capacity Manual, it has, right now we're up to 4 volumes. I think it's over 2,000 pages. So every committee member, every subcommittee member, even including our friends, were involved in helping us, making sure that that document came out with research that would be used and vetted by the committee and the subcommittees. And we're proud of it. It includes some additional new tools, including having travel time reliability associated with freeways as well as with urban streets. We've got a new chapter on active traffic and demand management. We've always had a ramp interchange chapter, but included in this ramp interchange chapter and a revision of that chapter is alternative intersections, which is something that's of interest to us and we're finding of interest to other people. We've always talked about simulation, but we're talking about it in a greater way, where simulation is not HCM and simulation, but sometimes you're using both of those. So we have some discussion about that in the new edition of the Higher Capacity Manual. And we're as well talking about pedestrians and bicycles. But it's still called the Higher Capacity Manual, but it's also subtitled A Guide for Multimodal Mobility Analysis. So pedestrian and bicycles transit facilities are still something that we are trying to incorporate, not as separate chapters, but they're incorporated within some of the major freeway urban street chapters as well. Some of the other activities that we're involved in, now that the chapter has, the HCM has been published, this new edition has been published, is now developing case studies where people can see how to go about using the Higher Capacity Manual for some specific type of issues. So we are in the process of just within our membership collecting case studies that we would like to be able to make available to users of the HCM, and we're also going to at one point have a call for case studies. So we're creating the template and the framework so that as these case studies come in, they can be used and published and people can use them as examples. As I mentioned, the HCM right now is compiled into 4 volumes, 3 of them that are printed documents and 1 is an electronic version. We are in the process now of really doing some soul searching and saying, okay, can we continue to produce larger and larger Higher Capacity Manuals? Is it really practical for doing it that way, or should we be looking at some alternative ways of presenting this information? And so we're beginning some very grassroots discussion about HCM in the cloud. As I mentioned, we are looking at the development of call for case studies, but we're also looking at development of call for papers. We've done some major research, and much of the research that's provided in the Higher Capacity Manual came from funded research. But there's some areas that we have not complete, and so we are still looking for people like you who are listening to this webinar to fill in some of these research gaps, identifying where there are missing areas, things that we didn't completely complete. And we're looking for people for researchers, for students, for faculty members to come in and to fill the gaps of a really pretty well-documented and completed manual, but there's still some areas that we could do better in. We're looking at papers on the implementation of the methodology and also for the call for papers, call for case studies. Next slide, please. Next slide. We had at our mid-year meeting this past year a fairly lengthy discussion about the future of the HCM. Where do we want to go from now? Now that we've done this major production of the 6th edition of the Higher Capacity Manual, what do we see happening next? And some of the themes that came out is the use of big data. And is becoming very rich in this area, has always been, but it's becoming even more rich and becoming access to that data. How do we use it then in the Higher Capacity Manual? And also we're having discussions about the use and automated connected vehicles. They're coming online, and how do we use the Higher Capacity Manual to be able to evaluate the performance of these potential vehicles, and how is it going to impact our methodology? We haven't really begun to discuss this, but we think this is something that we should at least have some opinions about, and how would we proceed? How would the manual change? So as we look down the road for to the Higher Capacity Manual and where we're going, these are some areas that we are going to be having discussion, and as a young member, it's a great opportunity for you to be able to get involved and to give your opinion. That's what most of us are doing. We're giving our opinion. Some of us more educated opinion than others, but provide your feedback and also be involved with some of the legwork associated with it. We recently had a task force that was kind of titled Social Media, because we wanted to reach out to our younger members. We've recently made it into a subcommittee, our communications subcommittee, and our goal is to be able to get those who are really more actively involved in Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, so that they're connected a little bit more with our committee. And so in between these meetings, in between the annual meeting and the mid-year meeting, we can be updating our users of the HCM as well as our friends and our members with activities that are happening on the committee. Next slide, please. So this has been gone over by several of the previous presenters. How can you get involved? Well, certainly becoming a friend of the committee. You really want to get on the email list. You want, when activities are occurring, that this is being provided to you in your inbox. Get active in the subcommittee. Consider being the secretary of a subcommittee. We have so many subcommittees, and a lot of times people shy away from being the secretary, but the secretary is actually a great position to be in. You know foremost what's happening within that subcommittee. You become a resource for the subcommittee, and it actually serves as an opportunity to even becoming a chair at some point of that subcommittee. As we mentioned, volunteer. I know that I was a little hesitant when I first started in TRB to volunteer, because this is a volunteer, nobody's paying me to do it, but I found it to be incredibly rewarding, not only to do the research and to bring it back to the committee and to have this discussion, but it sometimes it resulted in something that was implemented as a result of the small work that I was able to do. So certainly volunteer. I would encourage attending some of the mid-year meetings. They tend to be a smaller group of people. You get to be able to connect with the committee a little bit on a little bit more intimate level than at the annual meeting, especially if it's coming in an area that you live or close to an area. It's worth the effort of traveling to the mid-year meetings. We talk about things in a little bit more detail, and just really giving you an opportunity to really see the behind the scenes of what's happening on the committee. If you have an accepted TRB paper, ask to present your work at a subcommittee. A lot of times the subcommittees are doing some kind of business, but they would love to hear new and interesting research. And so this is another way of having a paper, your information be presented there. Speak to the subcommittee chair or the subcommittee, the word missing there is secretary. They can get you certainly connected and involved. If you want to be involved, you can be involved. I would really encourage you that it's not going to be a waste of time. It's something that's going to impact your immediate and knowing information, but certainly your long-term career in being involved with the Higher Capacity Manual. I think that's my last slide, but if there's another slide, can you go to the next slide? And that's it. So, again, I would just certainly encourage the young members to get involved, seek out opportunities where you can make a contribution and have your contribution be acknowledged, because it will be. We are looking at the Higher Capacity and Quality Service Committee. We are actively looking for young members, because we believe that you bring a resource that us older members, and I don't like to refer to myself that way, but our older members don't always have. Your technical skills are certainly sharper, and you have a different way of looking at things that we are definitely inviting you to participate in our subcommittee and certainly within the committee discussions. So thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to the next speaker, Zhao Yan.
Thank you. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Janice, and thank you for the previous three presenters. My name is Yao Zhang Wu. I'm assistant professor of transportation engineering at University of Arizona. Today, I'm thinking about presenting this topic in a really not using slides because I'm only using the website I'm showing you right now to talk about my committee and my previous experience with the TRB. So speaking of my committee, it's relatively small actually compared to previous three committees. The committee in terms of size and the subcommittee number of subcommittees and also the paper reviews, it's relatively small and it's under data and information system sections. So data actually has highly related to traffic operations, but it's actually allocated in different section. So our committee is in the data and information system sections. So as you can see on the website, our committee basically focus on the traffic monitoring. So we got several subcommittees actually related to this topic, pedestrian bike subcommittee and pit bike subcommittee, weight in motion, and speed, travel time, reliability subcommittee, and also a big data subcommittee. So we got several subcommittees also called, it's actually called kind of, led by other committees. So we are, our highway traffic monitoring committee is also highly related to urban data and urban transportation data and the systems ABZ 30 is also another committee. Work closely together. So my suggestion is that because I only show you the website, so for the audience, you could actually log into your my TRB and go to find these websites, and it will be really useful to see what each committee is doing. So that's why I only use this website. So speaking of my experience with the TRB and how I got involved with the TRB. So I remember 2008. That's the first time I got involved with the TRB. I was a PhD student at the University of Washington, and then my advisor just told me, okay, find a committee or several committees to join. So at that time, I got my paper accepted at this committee and other committees too. So I just try to not only present the poster sessions and the podium sessions, I also try my best to attend or sit in all the committees, committee meetings. And after the committee meetings, I try to talk to the committee chairs or other people about how the committee is doing and how can I contribute. So I really agree. I really appreciate the previous presenters. They talk about how you should get involved in committees. There are several tips. I think the best way is to talk to the chair. Tell the chair that you are willing to volunteer your time to help. So that's what I did. Actually, when I was a PhD student, I brought my CVs with me, really short ones, and tell them, okay, I can review papers for you, I can maintain your website, and they can do whatever that's helpful for your committee. Then actually after the TRB, my chair at that time of ABZ 35, he sent me emails saying that could you attend a mid-year meeting and also how about something else, So I say of course. So that's the time I was recruited as a young member. So at that time I started to help the committee with a lot of things, and I start getting to know more people. And until this year I'm an official member. I'm not young anymore, fortunately, also unfortunately. But so I started helping the paper review as a review coordinator. So I really enjoyed the process because I'm a professor now, and I really wanted to see how other people research are doing on regards the highway traffic monitoring. So that's how I got involved with TRB, and I actually also try to sit in other committees meetings to learn. As I mentioned, even though our committee is in the data section, I always wanted to know how the traffic operations or design groups, what they are doing. So I like to sit in those committees and to see I can be a liaison to help their committee tasks. So TRB means a lot to me. You can, as I mentioned, I was a PhD student, then I become a postdoc, and then I become a professor now. Now I try to encourage all my students to attend TRB annual meetings. And also there are some mid-year meetings will be held individually. Usually it's combined with other national meetings, like AASHTO national meetings. So I encourage my students to attend those meetings and also submit papers. So I think for my committee, we have done a lot of things to move research and practice forward. And my committee is more, I would say, it's more practical. We don't have a lot of professors in this committee, as you can see on this website. So our research always wanted to make sure what we develop can be implemented in practice and in real world. So some committees might be more theoretical. Probably you could see from the website, you can try to find other committees, and our committee is more relatively more practical. So last part of my my presentation, I was thinking I'll talk about the advice. I thought the previous presenters already talked about a lot of good advice. So my advice would be just be motivated to find a committee you really like and try to get in touch with committee chairs or members. Like, I will be happy to reply to your email. If you have any questions, you can find my email on the website. I'm pretty sure my committee chair probably he will be busy, but I think sometimes they would like to see some energetic young members or young people, young scholars, to write an email to them to offer their help. So just be a little bit aggressive, not just be just do it. Okay, so to get reach of all the members, especially TRB meetings. That's every January. I would highly encourage all of you guys to talk to the chairs and the members and sit in the meetings. Okay, that's all about what I'm going to talk about today, and thank you.
Hi, this is Leila Hajibabai from Young Member Council Operation and Preservation Group. First, I would like to thank all the presenters for introducing their committee activities and their insightful tips on how to effectively be involved in TRB committee activities and sharing their personal experience in this regard. And also thank you to all those who attended our webinar and those who organized this effort. At this point, we want to allocate some time for questions. The questions are mostly general and are pretty much addressed in the presentations. As part of the TRB Young Member Council under Operations and Preservation Group, we plan to promote and increase engagement of the new attendees in TRB activities. So our goal is to emphasize more on the importance of the TRB committee involvement and how to do so. All the presenters are welcome to contribute to responses. So the first question that we received is about the TRB subcommittees. At the beginning of this webinar, Nicola nicely showed a flowchart including all categories under TRB. It helped define groups, sections, standing committees, and subcommittees. The question that we received is about where we can find the list of subcommittees on the TRB website.
The subcommittees of standing committees in TRB, the best place to find the list of subcommittees is to go to that committee's website, and I believe you can find that on mytrb.org. So if you go and you look at a committee, I believe there's a link to their website, and then you can see what the subcommittees are. An option to that is if there's a committee that you're interested in and you can't find what their subcommittee structure is, to send an email to the committee chair, and they'll be able to answer that question for you.
Thank you. The next question is, how do we identify a standing committee versus a subcommittee versus a task force? If anyone has an insight.
So there, if it's an official TRB task force, that is determined and appointed at the management level within TRB. If it's a subcommittee that's a kind of a general subcommittee, again, that is decided at the management level within TRB. Within committees, committees can have task groups or task forces. Generally, don't call them task forces, just to try and keep away from the same terminology. That's kind of a much I guess bigger issue within TRB. But any committee can have a subcommittee or some sort of subgroup that conducts the business of the committee. I don't know if that really helps answer your question or not, but that's kind of the structure within TRB.
Yeah, that definitely answered the question. Thanks. The next question is, what is the impact of being involved in TRB activities? And if that is significant, how soon do the new attendees need to start this process? For example, does this help them find basically career opportunities or something like this?
Well, I'll start again. I think it's important to make sure you understand a couple of things. First of all, being involved in being a member of a committee is not something you can just go and say, oh, I'd like to be a member and then be appointed. As a young member, there are some set-aside slots for each committee for young members. So very often it's easier to get on as a young member than after you're beyond that age that qualifies you for that. But in general, you need to show, and I would say that this is even the case for young members, you have to show that you've got some real interest and some ability to help out, not necessarily by going to committee meetings, but to be involved. I think the exposure with TRB, my recommendation would be to look at it primarily to help improve your technical knowledge and technical skills, and then also to give back to the profession or the community. And I think if you do that and focus on that primarily, then finding opportunities for employment becomes a lot easier than if you're going to TRB with the specific thought that you're going to try and find employment. So I would recommend that you look to TRB for your overall career growth and things like that, and then I think employment opportunities will come more easily.
I agree with Les. TRB, if you look at it as an opportunity for you to learn and grow as an individual, to look at where you want to improve different knowledge, skills, and abilities that you have as an individual, it provides a perfect opportunity and platform for you to, based on your self-assessment of where you want to improve, to get engaged on technical issues around which you may be working on or where you want to work on, to give you exposure to you know, those development opportunities. It does take extra time. It is hard work, but I think the return on your time will far exceed what you could put a value on that time. It'll provide you also, in addition to honing technical skills, you have the opportunity to work on writing and speaking skills. You make presentations potentially if you've you know, done the work and earned the opportunity, and it provides you an opportunity to coordinate, collaborate, and actually lead, which you know, you may or may not have at an early stage in your career when you're working on other projects. It also gives you an opportunity to build a network of other experts that you can rely on as appropriate, or to figure out where you need to do research and find information quickly. So it provides a great platform to build those skills, sharpen those skills, build that technical network that you can rely on, which are all what employers are looking for, you know, for hiring or promoting people. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question that we received is the following: how can we get more information about the presentation or poster that we see at TRB? Sometimes it's very hard to get the time with the presenters at the actual event.
Well, I believe those posters are also included with the papers. Once you registered for the conference, you get access to the papers that are presented as well as the posters. I know you take like a picture of it and it's posted as well. And then on each one of those posters, there's contact information of the presenters and the authors associated with the papers. So I know as an author of papers at TRB, people have contacted me, and I'm happy to talk with them further about what was in there, what I meant to say, or what the research was motivated by, any questions that they may have. So certainly after the session is over, those posters are posted in the same place where the papers are presented, and participants have an access to that.
Thank you. We have another question. What is the difference in responsibilities between being a member versus a friend of a committee? And can a committee friend also volunteer for major activities like paper reviews or basically research needs statements and these activities?
So absolutely. As a friend of the committee, you are basically on the email list and you're involved with knowing what's happening along with the committee. In terms of involvement, we welcome friends to participate on much of the activities that we do. As a matter of fact, we use that as a gauge when we are looking to provide membership to a friend on a subcommittee. We say, well, have they been actively involved? Is there anything that they've done in the past? So the difference is that as a member, you really are there making decisions. You're voting on changes within the committee or anything that requires a committee vote. As a friend, you don't have those privileges, but you have much of the others in terms of being able to participate on activities. I can't think of anything that's major that we would not invite a friend to do. I know when we did the Hybrid Capacity Manual, we had reviews being done by friends. We voted, the vote was done by committee members only. And so in some decision making, they will say that this decision is primarily only going to be done with the committee members, and there's some decisions that are done with friends that are involved with it. So it really depends on what the activity is, what actually they're voting on. But the friend is a great place to start and to move towards just kind of my own personal experience. I never really was trying to be a committee member. I didn't know what it was involved in. I was doing enough as a friend. So I wouldn't let being a friend of a committee think that that's something less than. You certainly can do just as much as committee members, but you're limited in terms of the voting that's being done.
I agree with Janice. This is John Obenberger for the Freeway Operations Committee. We treat everybody that attends our meetings almost equally. The only case may be members consider, sit at a particular table that may be limited to 30 seats, but participation in dialogue and discussion and engagement of activities is, we look for all volunteers, and we view that as a way for mentoring new volunteers to learn about processes, procedures, and to get involved, so the next generation of leaders of the committee can be developed and become active. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just from a personal experience, I was involved in the Freeway Operations Committee. Well, I mentioned before that that was the first committee meeting I ever attended back in 1979, and I was involved in the committee as a friend until, gosh, about 5 years ago, I was appointed to that committee. But for all that intervening time, and especially probably for 20 years before I became an actual member, I would say that most people, even people who were on the committee, thought that either I was a committee member or had been a committee member because I was involved. And I got the same level of benefit out of it, quite frankly, as if I was a committee member for that long. So committee membership can be important, but the real distinguishing characteristic between a committee member and not a committee member, well, I shouldn't put it that way. The real distinguishing characteristic of how people view an individual and their contribution and what an individual gets out of it is about involvement, not about membership.
And this, Yao, I want to add to what Les just mentioned. I thought on the mytrb.org, you can actually add yourself as a friend easily, and after that, you'll start getting more information from each committee. Once you got more information, and they will have some announcement, and you can get yourself more involved with the committee activities. Let's just mention, as long as you get yourself involved more and more, people will think that you contribute a lot, and then when there's the opportunity to select a new member or doing a rotation, once a while, once a couple of years, they usually every 2 years, they will rotate out some members, and then you will have the opportunity to join the other committee as a member. Another thing to get involved is I can tell the chair you want to review papers. I found one thing this year is that committee members and friends, they are not necessarily included in the reviewer pool. So I have to manually import them on, through the system. So if you can volunteer, you say I want to review papers, that'll be really helpful, and people will start remember you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have another question about the activities, the volunteering activities. Are the activities do these activities require high loads of responsibilities? How much time are often spent at technical sessions, networking, and meetings during the annual conference, as well as for the activities during the year? Basically, how much involvement is needed for effective
this is John. For the Freeway Operations Committee, it will vary depending on what the activity is and the volunteer role that the person may agree to take on. If you volunteer to participate in the development of a research problem statement, if you're the key author of that research problem statement, it may take a couple hours, to do research and pull together a cogent research problem statement. But if you're just one of the people reviewing, an hour or two in the process of reviewing other people's comments, providing your own comments, and collaborating with the other partners to develop a research problem statement. If you're volunteering on a chapter like the Freeway Operations and Handbook chapter, depending on where we are in the process, scanning current practices, documents that are being developed in industry, so that way we're always looking for what may be needed for the next update to a chapter, and that doesn't take a lot of time throughout the year, usually a half hour, an hour, to update content or review material, and maybe participate in an email exchange or a short conference call one time a year. But then if the material is being updated, we may have to review material, but that's on a every 2, 3, 4 year basis. So it varies by activity. Thank you.
Thanks. We have another specific question. One of them is as follows. What is the best way to learn about specific events like paper competition or any sort of student competition within TRB or within the committees? Is there any response?
Well, I would say the best way is to become involved in a committee, and the committees will send out information to all members and friends about a wide variety of topics that would include paper competitions or other things. Nick, do you have any other suggestions other than that? Nick had to leave early, didn't he? He might not be here anymore.
This is Janice. I wanted to mention, I believe it's the TRB website and it might also be the My TRB, that lists the call for papers that comes out from all the committees. You can go by committee and search for the committee. You can go by search word and identify for any of the committees for this particular search word that you're using what the call for papers are. It may not include competitions. I think the competitions typically tend to be associated with organizations, and I don't have a good handle on how to find out about these individuals. They may not be specific to TRB, but within TRB, the call for papers is published. As we get closer to the deadline of submission for papers, August 1st, probably like about June or so, is when you'll find quite a bit of call for papers that are listed there. But as I mentioned, those are just the call for papers, and they would not include anything related to competitions.
Thank you. And there are some other questions that I read them one by one. The first one is as follows. A lot of young members and those early in their career struggle to justify attendance at TRB annual meeting. What are some benefits of sending this group of people for employers?
Well, I'll start there. For me, both when I was in the a manager in the public sector and now in the private sector, there are a couple things about attending TRB. One is I know that the person is interested, and even if it's just at an interest level of let's find out what the heck this is all about. But I think more important than that, there's anybody who would attend, I think, is giving up time that they could be doing something else. So they show a certain level of commitment. And I know that if they go to TRB, they're going to be learning and improving their skill set and improving not only their technical skill set, but their ability to communicate with others and things like that. And those are all really important to have in your workforce. So whether it's to recruit someone or to raise the skills of the people who are currently in the workforce, it's important. Now the flip side of that is no organization can send as many people as they would like to send to something like TRB. The costs are such that no one can really just afford to send everybody. So even though there's a benefit in sending employees, sometimes the the budgetary constraints won't allow nearly as many as an employer would like to send.
Thank you. We have another specific question. What is your suggestion and advice to a young member whose paper has been rejected?
I'll start, but I'd like to have some of the other chairs chime in on this as well. From my perspective, the big thing is to read the comments and take the comments seriously from the reviewers. I review a lot of papers, and I always try to provide information that will make the paper better. And sometimes that means that maybe in a year you can resubmit. Maybe it's just good information for the next paper that you want to write. I have seen some situations where there was a paper that was really close, but not quite, and we encouraged the group of authors to go back and make the improvements that we suggested and to resubmit. They resubmitted, but they didn't make any of the changes. So that's kind of the flip side. When I see that, it's like, boy, these folks aren't even, you know, taking seriously the amount of time that we've spent in reviewing the paper. So I would say the most important thing is to take the comments seriously, not personally, but look at those as ways to improve your paper or your writing skills or your research techniques.
Yeah, I would build on what everything Les had to say, and we understand there's a diverse group of reviewers, anywhere from 3 and sometimes we'll have 8 reviewers, 9 reviewers look at a paper. So we as a committee and the professionals that are involved in a review of the papers take it seriously and put forth a lot of effort, and it's within the intent of sort of the role and responsibility of the committee in publishing papers, that they're really presenting new material that are adding to the knowledge, adding to the state of the practice that hasn't already been published and written about before. So our committee really looks closely at, you know, the purpose, stated purpose and objectives of the paper, and what is their contribution to the body of knowledge, and what are the recommendations and conclusions to demonstrate that you address the objectives of your paper. And those are usually the hallmarks around which most of the reviewers will provide feedback of areas where papers need to improve on, because they haven't clearly demonstrated what the research people have done, which is oftentimes really good research, but their specific contribution to the body of knowledge to demonstrate that the researcher has been able to articulate in their paper the unique things that's different from what's already been written about on a particular subject. Thank you.
Thanks.
I just, before you moved on, I wanted to, you know, because I submit papers to TRB often and I get rejections. It's not always the easiest thing to handle, but I have come to the point that those comments that are provided in the review of papers are very valuable. As a PhD advisor to my students, we often try to submit papers to TRB just so that we get the comments back. If it gets accepted, great. If it doesn't, the comments are so useful in making sure that we're on the right track, that we can make sure that the next submission, whether it's to TRB or to another journal, that we've captured all of the things that need to be captured in it. So it has to be, you have to use it as a teachable moment. There are certain elements that have to be included, and if more than one person is saying that this paper is not ready for publishing, you might want to take them, you know, what they're saying is is useful and probably should be used to revise the paper. The paper has to be interesting. It has to be technically sound. It has to be useful to researchers. And every once in a while, like, we miss it. When my students, we miss it with one of these things, and we love our little topic that we're working on, but nobody cares about it. Or we love our little topic, but it's just we need more depth in it. So trying to understand where did you go wrong and just trying to work on it and fix it and resubmitting. Sometimes resubmitting it to another committee if it's not in their correct committee, or perhaps even another journal if you have to do it that way. I would also get involved in reviewing papers yourself if you're not already doing so. If you have a paper that has not been accepted, understand what makes, what the rubric is that's being used to assess your paper, and then understanding what you may have done that may have caused your paper not to be accepted when you look at that rubric. So definitely don't let it be the last paper you submit. If you get a rejection, rejection is kind of part of, if you're in a position where you are trying to publish papers, kind of get used to it and then use it as a teachable moment and move on.
I also agree with all the panelists. I think it's just take it positively. On a positive way, I thought the reviewer comments always really helpful for me to improve my papers and my students' papers. As a professor, my paper got rejected many times, but I just take it positively in a positive way and don't get discouraged. And just improve your paper and resubmit again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That was the last question. Thanks all for the helpful tips. I'll pass it to Nilu, the organizer.
Thank you very much, Leila. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I also want to really thank our panelists who shared some good information with us today here. So as I stated before, a recorded version of this webinar along with the presentation slides will be available to you on our website. So that's it. On behalf of National Operations Center of Excellence and our presenters, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.